Bitcoin and economic collapse. I believe the financial system will be collapsing within the next 5 to 10 years, and Western countries will be hit the hardest, as we produce the least and rely on the strength of our currencies over economic productivity. What gives Western countries' currencies any value is military power and allegiances, and also the people's belief that currency has value. Currency relies on the placebo effect to have value. It's only valuable because we believe it is. And as more and more normies begin to realize that fiat currency is debased through hyperinflation, people will look to turn their money into other assets more and more, faster and faster. Until eventually people look at fiat currency the same way we look at bartering systems of the past, like shells and rocks that were used by old civilizations, which seems kind of ridiculous now. It really is quite stupid when you think about it, that we work our whole lives to get money, but most people don't even have the mental capacity to question it, and will often get angry when you talk about it and try to gaslight you to make it seem like you don't know what you're talking about because you didn't drop 100 grand on a commerce degree, when this information is available online and has been for decades. So saving money is actually really stupid for most people who don't make significant interest. And it's a great way to stay poor, by trying to save money. But the docile masses will slowly catch on and invest in things as soon as possible, rather than holding on to fiat any longer than they have to. Baby boomers currently do this with property, taking advantage of their demographic dominance by buying up all of the houses before their kids and grandkids can buy them. However, because their kids and grandkids can't afford to have kids, or many kids if they do, because of inflation, hoflation, and the housing crisis, we rely on mass immigration to prop up the economy, including property prices, regardless of any negative social impacts that this may create, which is obviously a taboo subject, and the AI algorithm will come after me if I elaborate on that at all. But rest assured, it is more difficult for Westerners to leave and get citizenship in other countries where they are often not even allowed to buy property, and they're often also targeted and discriminated against for their biological persuasions, we'll say. There's no affirmative action for white folk in other countries. And at the same time, we are accused of being privileged. So socially disrupting mass immigration is pushed in Western countries like Australia, largely to sustain the boomers' property investment portfolios, while their children and grandkids are growing up in a world where they can barely afford to put a roof over their own head and are often forced to live with their parents until their late 20s, and in the future, not too far away, it will be their late 30s. Potentially, unless the housing market collapses, which it might. So to make matters worse, the boomers pushed the front-bottom advocacy movement on us, which also cut our wages in half, and also directs more of men's stolen taxation money towards the front-bottom owners, and also makes it very dangerous for a man to live with a woman who can legally cheat on him and then take his property. Seems fair? So the demand for housing is also going up in that respect, because a lot of men, like myself, refuse to ever live with a woman because these laws are so absurd and women definitely take advantage of them. So using property, the things we live in, not as shelter, but as a financial instrument, while beating their chests about sustainability, has many, many layers of hypocrisy and retardation. It's actually quite an insult that we design and build houses that are deliberately left vacant just to accrue value for the owners. In Australia in 2021, there were over 1 million vacant homes, This is nearly 10% of the total supply. Some reasons for this include investment properties being held for no other reason than to get capital gains, and some investors choose not to rent them out to minimize the risk of property damage and to avoid taxation on that income and take advantage of other financial loopholes. So as people evolve and we get smarter, which remains to be seen as I believe people are actually getting dumber, people may actually start to question why they work their entire lives for fiat currency that can be minted out of thin air by a shady group of elitists that we're not allowed to name. This will cause more people to invest in things like cryptocurrencies, mainly ones like Bitcoin, that are public, that have a public ledger. So Bitcoin has many good properties when it relates to the required characteristics of money. However, one of the downsides of Bitcoin is that every transaction and wallet address is publicly available. While there is also an upside to this in some ways, it's good to have transparency in some respects. This will also allow for wallet addresses to be targeted by AI algorithms that are programmed by the powers that be to prevent Bitcoin coming from that address and being converted into cash or other items online. If your Bitcoin address is essentially blacklisted and shadow banned. And they might do this because maybe you said something about the shady group of elitists we can't talk about and don't believe in their version of history, And I'll remind you that Yeezus or Kanye West recently had his bank account frozen just a year or so ago. So because of this reason, Bitcoin lacks fungibility. Bitcoin is associated with blacklisted wallets based on the AI algorithm used to determine if they are blacklisted or not. Those Bitcoins from those wallets won't be as valuable as Bitcoin coming from non-blacklisted addresses. And a lot of people might not want to buy them, and you might not be able to sell them on an exchange because the exchanges will be heavily regulated. And this may even create arbitrage opportunities for people or miners that have virgin wallets that have never been used. Because then it can't be blacklisted if it's never been used in theory. And, also might be an advantage for institutions that are in the big club, like BlackRock, that will probably never be blacklisted. So the issue of transparency doesn't end there. If Bitcoin goes into the tens of millions of dollars, which it likely will, there will be many individuals with a higher net worth than actual countries, except they likely won't have their own professional military. So governments will possibly wage war against individuals in order to seize Bitcoin and then just blame them for some random crime after the fact. And the general programmed public will probably believe it because it was coming from one of the mainstream media sources that they worship, which in the future may even be signaled directly into their brain's microchip. So furthermore, as more and more jobs are displaced by, AI and technology, which is just going to boom in the next few years, more and more people will be relying on government handouts. A lot of men will probably be able to retire early from their crypto portfolios and hence not have to pay tax to support the normies who will be displaced by AI and don't own any crypto because the other sheep haven't bought it yet, so they're not going to either. And they won't spend a few hours of their time looking into it. They'll watch Netflix. So in order to counter this, governments will likely try to identify the wallet addresses of high net worth citizens and start taxing them on unrealized gains. Not the Bitcoin that they've sold, but the Bitcoin that they bought and went up in value. And that means that they'll want a cut of your Bitcoin before you even sell it or spend it. They'll likely use the threat of violence, imprisonment, or ban your ability to travel internationally or outside of your smart city zone. Maybe they won't let you have access to their central bank digital currencies. And, in order to maintain your social credit rating, you might need to pay the government a percentage of your Bitcoin holdings every year. And they could probably set up a smart contract to achieve this. Of course, all of this assumes that the public is smart enough to stand up against CBDCs, because they might just take over the whole blockchain, but I don't think that's definitely going to happen. They'll try and implement CBDCs that will basically be programmed and force you to spend them within a certain time frame to stop people from saving and hoarding wealth and getting capital gains off of that. They want us all to be working. Even though all of our jobs are going to be gone, they'll still want us working just because they want to be able to control us. So if we're not doing something productive, because AI is doing all of the productive things, they'll just still want us doing something that they control so that we're not free, because they don't want us to be free. It frightens them. And to be honest, most people don't want to be free. Most people come from the family lineage of slavery, where they've just been slaves for millennia and millennia, except for people that come from royal families. And it's programmed into them. And a lot of people lose their identities if they lose their occupation. We're raised in these schooling systems that teach us that our value is defined by work. And that's true to a degree, but you have to question, what is the purpose of your work? Look at how people get rich nowadays. It's like, are they doing something productive, or are they doing like drop shipping, where they just basically sell you something that is linked to another website and they make a profit from that? OnlyFans content creators. I mean, shit. So, from all of this, I speculate that privacy coins, privacy cryptocurrencies are drastically undervalued. The mere fact that privacy currencies like Monero are getting banned from large exchanges because governments don't like them is extremely bullish. That means that they're powerful and they actually work. Of course, I don't own any privacy coins, and I don't recommend you do. Because that will reduce our future social credit ratings. And when AI listens to this, it'll be linked to my identity, and so I have to be honest that I don't own any privacy crypto. So privacy coins will likely be adopted by people who do not want this future of eternal taxation to pay for people who are not financially responsible enough and didn't buy crypto before it was a $100 trillion asset class, which it likely will be in the not too distant future. They'll just keep poo-pooing it. They'll be going to through the traditional finance system to get their financial advice. They'll be going to universities to get their education. But Gen Z seems to be kind of switched on to all of this stuff, a lot more so than older generations, so I'll give them credit for that. Only about 25% of crypto investors, though, are women, and men aren't going to be getting married and taking care of women as much in the future. So they're likely going to make this a gendered issue and blame the fact that women spent the years of the crypto bull market and the crypto gold rush going further and further into debt, to go on holidays, to post on their Insta, to keep up with the Joneses, rather than eating cheap food, living beneath their means, and buying Dogecoin. And they're going to blame all of this on the shoulders of men. As always, they'll blame the penisarchy. And, after all of the advancements from the front-bottom advocacy movement that women have achieved, how they're able to be given preferential treatment in so many areas and, given all these advantages to accrue wealth, as their assets go to zero, it will all have been for nothing. as asset classes other than crypto will likely tank during the coming collapse. So it's like people in the future, not too far away, if you don't own crypto, you'll be like someone now that doesn't own property or doesn't have cash in the bank. You'll be poor. And like even the boomers, like they still have 20 years left, some of them, you know? Like their retirement plans are going to dry up. And they'll probably be relying on their children who invested in crypto to take care of them, to pay for their nursing home bills. You know, after all the trials and tribulations we go through that they didn't have to go through, their wealth will dry up at the end of it if they don't put their money into crypto. But back to what I was talking about, privacy coins will be adopted by intelligent people who don't want their digital financial fingerprint targeted by nosy governments. And ironically, it will also be bought up by these shady governments as their fiat currency scheme dries up and they realize they don't want every transaction they make on Bitcoin to be observed by the peasants who might not like where they spend their money. So when countries start to buy up privacy coins, you know, because they're not going to want to use their CBDs for everything potentially, you'll probably think maybe you should have diversified your crypto portfolio and bought some Monero at $200 rather than being a Bitcoin maxi and thinking that following the herd and following the biggest trend is the most financially responsible thing you can do. When taking risks before the rest is the only way to multiply your wealth in any meaningful way. And again, like I said, don't actually buy privacy coins because it will reduce your social credit rating. So, you know, these are just my ideas.